Okay, hello everybody. Just bear with me. I usually don't go live from my laptop, but it says that we are live. And basically, what we're going to be discussing today is the importance of us tapping in or tapping back in with our trust, getting familiar. Let me see if I can. Because it got a glare. That's better. Okay. Tapping back in with, our trust, getting that knowledge, wisdom, understanding again, being able to operate in trust. So we have a very special guest that's going to be Hirm-King Solomon. I'm going to see if I can get him on here because I am not too sure. I want y'all to see his face, but I told him if we're not able to get him on in person, I can definitely give him a call and we can basically, listen to what he has to say, because pretty much he has come at a time where we're needing to bridge the gap and move forward with action. We've been doing a lot of planning, talking about this over the years, but no one has really been able to come in and take us to, the promised land. So the king has arrived. You feel me? And it's time to go to the promised land, baby. So let me get the king on the phone. I'm not seeing how to bring you in on the video here on the live so we can show face, but it's all good. We're gonna give you a call. How you doing, King? How you doing, King?
I'm well. How is everyone?
All is well. All is well. So I will be able to let you know if we have any questions, from people. And you should also be able to see. Well, I don't know if you're tapped in on the live while we're talking because we're speaking on Messenger. But pretty much, I gave an introduction. You the bridge that we've been waiting on to get to the other side of the mountain, baby.
Yes. Let me see if I can get in this right here. I've been having some difficulties, and
Okay.
obviously we probably understand a little bit why here. But
Oh, we do. We understand.
uh,
Every time I go live, it's always an issue when it comes to inviting other people on to show face with me. So we know why, but we don't let nothing stop us from moving forward. All praise. So, I'm grateful to have you. Thank you so much for taking out the time today. I pretty much gave the people an overview of what we are seeking. And, that's to bring in people who are aware of the process, who's ready to move forward, finalize their paperwork, and who can become a trustee. So, if you can give us a little background on who you are, where you come from, what you got going on, how you got the way you got, and where do you plan on taking us? Where, and I don't want to say you because I know it's a team effort. But overall, what is the vision? We've spoken about making the world a better place and how nobody coming to save us. We are who we have been waiting on. We are the ancestors, so on and so forth. So, if you can just fill us in a little bit, that'll be amazing.
yeah, that sounds wonderful. Where I was, came into body at, I guess we can say, was in Middletown, Ohio. And I was actually birthed in with the name John Ryan Bing at first, Bing. And then later on throughout my life, that changed. Life happens, and goods and commerce kind of get exchanged, specifically to the work that we're embodying and doing here on this earth. So it went from John Ryan Bing to John Ryan Parent to now His Imperial and Royal Majesty King Solomon, and that actually happened over with the Sovereign Imperial Court over in England. The day that the Queen died was the day that this all happened.
Wow.
So that was not of 2022, 9 being completion. So so we knew then that we're on to something. And yeah, that's a little bit about the names, and we can go into the vehicles of these states, and what a trust is, and the jurisdictions, because we have to look at the jurisdictions, and how law is orchestrated, because all of law actually comes from the foundation, right? The foundation of the temple. And the foundation of the temple holds all of law, whether you're talking admiralty law, which most of the beings in the public are navigating around. You've got natural law, right? You've got common law. You have all sorts of different laws that first start on the foundation. So our trust specifically is a foundational trust that really goes back through time. It's attributed to a Rothschild trust, they would say, right? I'm going to drop that name. A royal trust. What that means when we hear that name, it's actually Rothschild, the royal child, which we all are, right? And we've been actually in trust here in the United States. But there's been things that have happened, and there's a sovereignty movement going on right now. And we're not that. We're coming with the certified sovereign, with the First Republic, and in the due process and how that actually happens. Because really, if you think about it, sovereignty, right? You should probably not have to do so much paperwork, right? If spirit or creator or whatever your God may be had created you to be the way that you are, right? They probably had left you intact the way that you are naturally, and it wouldn't really have to provide you to go into contract. But it just so happens that we set society up for that. So we're kind of walking ourselves home. In a way, while relearning certain things that's happened to us, and it's really a collective thing. We can't do this without everyone.
Right.
So that's those are some key points. I would like to go into some of the jurisdictions, specifically via the public-private. Because I think right now, from what I've seen and what we're witnessing, there seems to be, a lot of different, there's a lot of sovereign movements, right? Where people are actually having people use the FRN notes, which is just standard money for those who don't know. Not backed by anything. Probably a lot of the reasons why we're in the situation economically today is probably because, probably has something to do with this, but that's all the eye to behold. So, jurisdiction-wise, we have most people are operating in the public. That's their jurisdiction is. You go into contracts such as statutes, legislations, acts of parliament, public policies, things like that. It becomes for most of us, we're seeing it's kind of a nightmare, right?
Right.
It's like, well, I sign my paperwork, I sign this document, they tell me to go over here, I go over here, then they tell me to go over there, and I go over there, and then I sign again, and what's really happening? That's what we need to start, or at least what I've done was upon the arrival and the awareness to this is like, well, what's really going on? Why do I feel depleted after doing all this stuff, right? Specifically in the public. So, you begin to explore stuff, you get online, you look at, what people have done, and what people have done is not necessarily what you, for your own embodiment, may need to do. And again, sovereignty can happen as fast as, certified sovereignty and stepping into this field can happen as soon as you really decide that you're going to step into it. Because it's really about your soul reign, your own embodiment coming into body to be able to navigate how you do commerce.
Indeed.
All right.
Indeed.
How does that happen? That's the key. So what seems to happen is that we were told things to where we had to look outside ourselves, right? So we looked outside ourselves, and we went to different people, and we paid money, right, for different things, because we had kind of forgot, right? Like we had like this amnesia thing that we actually had it the whole entire time, like because we do, and not enough people really tell people that because, again, there's money in this, right?
Right.
People got to pay their bills. People got to, feed their kids. People got to do this. But also, it's still coming from a place of lack because we still can't take care of really basic needs. Right. So the basic needs are like things like living water, because most of us are drinking dead water.
That's right.
Right? So that's an issue. So that means we're probably not thinking, to a capacity where we could receive the light, to where this embodiment could be walked in full truth.
You better say it.
Right? So these are all things, we got to really look at that really come down, really basic things that we forget when we're building temples and building nations and building communities and building families.
Right.
Food, shelter.
Right. That's all we need. That's been my journey for the past 2 years is, I was stripped down to only having food, water, and shelter, and I learned to be grateful for that. So for 2 years, I lived in a tent, and, I had food to eat, I had shelter, and of course, I lived on the beach, so I could wash my clothes and do what I needed to do. And it just taught me to be grateful and really showed me what's important in life. And as long as you have food, water, and shelter, you really do have it all.
Well, yeah, because, you start to look at the problems of the world right now. It's like masculine versus feminine. We've got like all these different sort of issues going on today that have us bypass the real essence of what culture is and what community is and what the golden age actually really is. Okay, so if we can't have a golden, if we don't know certain components.
That's right.
And people in certain places might have the resources to be able to tell you, but they're not going to tell you. I don't know. Maybe water shuts off at 32 degrees for some people. I don't know. Who knows? But the idea is there's a lot of talk, and I talk much too. I feel like I'm in the thing too. Is we do a lot of talking, and we've been doing a lot of talking, and there's not enough people, including myself, who are willing to take the leap into committing 100% to the idea that we could actually come together and have something, because that's the way that the golden age works. It is like, we're not going to release anything. You always talk about Jasara and Asara, all this stuff. Nothing's going to happen until we collectively come together. Because, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like God sitting up there or whatever, the Most High, or however you want to call your thing. And it's like, looking down, it's like, well, here we have a lot of kids, and they're kind of fighting, but we want to give them this gift because, they've been asking for it the whole freaking time.
Right.
The whole time.
Right.
Well, little did they know that, they think they were thrown in the cage, and we gave them, the keys were right there, and the doors were open, but they thought they were locked in the cage.
Right. Well, you spoke a word, and so what I have been focusing on is healing. because self-love is the greatest love of all. It's the highest vibration. And so that enables you to walk in spirit and in truth, because we can't vibrate high living a lie, and we cannot manifest the things of God, the promises of God, when we're not in the will of God per se. So healing is a big thing, for us to come together. Everybody got to be healed. We can't have these underlying issues that causes us to be jealous, envious, spiteful, all of the things that we see that's going on in the world. So, the healing contributes to self-love, and self-love contributes to you walking in spirit and truth, so that you can truly walk in your power. So that's been the angle and the journey that the Great Mother has had me on, as far as what I've been teaching and sharing with people, and even living, and doing for self, and being a living example. So what you're saying is, and so my responsibility is to pretty much break things down in layman terms, so that even a child can understand. And I've taken on that role because I understand, even for myself, growing up as a child, even into adulthood, like, it took me a little longer to understand things. And so, I understand where a lot of people, especially when you're talking about trust law and just this whole process, it's a lot of information. So, what I like to do is, take it all in, so that I can be able to explain it to the people, and how it will benefit. So, as you speak, I may interject to kind of break it down and, explain it to the people in layman terms. Basically what you're saying, I think we're on the same page. We've been speaking for a few days now, actually about a week now, and a lot of time, talking between the two of us, and just kind of figuring out what role we're going to play in one another's life, and saying, okay, well, we on the same page, so let's move forward. So I'm definitely down to do whatever it is that I need to do to be a part of the team and move this forward, because it's action time now. Like you say, we've been talking about it, we've been making plans, we've been going in circles, but just with the things that you and I have discussed, I see that you basically have the keys. You got the keys. So it's time to unlock these doors, in this vault, so that we can usher in restoration and replenish the earth.
Yeah, hallelujah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, and it's very much a group effort, and I'd like to, give some shout outs definitely to First Republic Registry over in England, and the sovereign imperial families walking this great earth, benevolent beings who are here in this time to really meld and work together on this objective, because we've had a lot of distortions on certain stories on what's what and who's who and how is it all come together. And it's really imperative that in the action process, because we've been in training, that we really step aside from cultural differences, religious differences, all of the things that has been part of the MK programming that many of us have gone through, and strip away a great deal of illusion. So
right.
That's very important for us to join hands together in that way, to make things a much more impactful place, because the way that this trust, and our trust is set up is for generations and generations to come. So with that being said, I guess we'll go into a little bit more of some of the components of sovereignty and the trust itself. So no corporate entities or agents are authorized to issue or anyone an actual sovereign certificate, which everyone will need if they're going to make this jump, because they're tied to their your Uniform Commercial Code to really honor your sovereignty, according to foundational law, you would need it. Myself with Solomon's Temple United Trust Foundation Private Bank, I'm the grantor and exchanger to the trust. So I can actually authorize, the sovereignty certificate to those beings as out of the fictitious. And that's really what we're here to signify and to embody. We're not owners. With this trust, we manage the land, we manage the assets, but we don't own. Common mistake, because when you own, you actually owe. So that makes you also a debtor. And each one of us was actually born a creditor.
That's right.
Just what has happened in the claiming of lost memories that most of us are going through here. So
when you say that we're not an owner, and that we're managers, you kind of gave the analogy. We had a conference the other night. You was like, because when you die, you can't take anything with you. Can you go into that a little bit more? Because we've been taught ownership. You own your house, you own this, you own that. But like you said, you still have taxes, so you truly never really own anything. It's all an illusion.
Well, the thing is, that's one of the biggest things they did. Was part of our healing, really. It's not really anything anyone did. It's part of our healing and our development was we were taught, and a lot of us here in America is like, well, you gotta own something if you're gonna be of something. You gotta own it. You gotta own the land. You gotta own the thing, and that's actually really a silly, fictitious idea. And it doesn't work out like that, because even if you were to pay off your property, whether it be a house or anything like that, it still sits right on the land. Mm-hmm. You can pay the house off, but you're still going to pay land tax, right? Mm-hmm. So the things that, those who are going through this movement are finding out, they have to go back on track. Actually, we're trying to get off contract, because each time you write your signature, right, going into contract with the admiralty law and codes and the public. So, which again is the system that was there for us to learn. So we needed this training, right? So then we could step on land and then build together, and build something again that we've all been waiting for. But if we're most of us are in admiralty law, out there swimming, drowning, with no clinch to the land, because we can't navigate in that particular way, it makes it extremely hard, and we get used to it. And it's just like, well, yeah, we just want to own. Right. We want to own it. But once we own it, it's just like, wow, we stop paying bills. Or so they think, or so we think, right?
Right. Right. That's right.
So yeah, common law, with the law of the land, universal codes, abide by this. It offers a particular structure that can have those who've been working on this or see value in it to come on board. Right. And there's other trusts, and there's other people, and there's other options in doing this. It's just that this vehicle particularly holds the vehicles for those for the golden age and beings who want to really step in their true power. But that's something you have to do, because no one can tell you about what you need to do and how you need to be able to move in your own embodiment.
You better say it. Ain't nobody coming to save us, bro. Everybody got to save themselves if you want to be
You know,
saved.
well, we can be way showers, right?
We could be way showers, indeed. We're supposed to be a living example. So but everybody got to put in the work, because you're gonna get out of life what you put into it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
We reap
that's
what we
right.
sow. It's true. So now, can you explain? You mentioned how becoming a part of the team, you'll be able to grant access to the certificates that we need, which will allow us to access things like basic necessities, houses, vehicles, stuff. You didn't speak about this, but just from the knowledge that I have, we will have access to be able to secure housing, vehicles, lines of credit, all of that type of stuff, right? So after that is done, so can you talk about that, and also go into what will be the responsibility of a trustee? After you got all your paperwork done, now you're living comfortable. Now you're not stressing about bills, how you gonna pay your rent. You don't have all of this stuff to worry about, because like you say, we were born creditors. So we really shouldn't have any bills today, but it's basically like a paper genocide that we're dealing with. So just kind of want to talk about the responsibilities of the trustee, and how we can get from the point, like for myself, for instance, I'm a debtor right now, because even though I've started the process, with my paperwork, I'm not completely finished with it. So now, getting me from being a debtor to a trustee, what does that look like, and how is that, how does that work?
Well, cuz you're my cuz too, so trustee. Wow. I think what we should probably more focus on is the beneficiaries, to the
Okay.
trust, which is those, our dearly beloved. And as far as trustees are concerned, yeah, they would be working a lot of the fiduciary aspect, and coming out, obviously, as board of trustees to make decisions given the provisions and guidelines of this specific, very in-depth trust here that we have. So, as managers of the land and all of the assets here. So, beneficiaries, what was happening, because we've always been the beneficiaries, right?
Right.
When you've gone to do commerce, you've actually always been the beneficiaries. Most of us just didn't know how to yield the power of being a beneficiary.
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, but we've always been in trust. It's just that the particular mechanisms of the old guard, will say, is it's transforming into a new system.
That's right.
That all have heard about, and are working on. So beneficiaries, yes. I'm not going to go too much into what that all is going to look like, because there's many other people that are involved in this movement. Okay, that's not just myself by any means. But there are packages via Nasara Jasara, for instance, and we have the QFS system, the quantum financial system, also that ties into this. And the thing about it is that we're linking and working on right now the essence of having a QFS system backed by actual tangible gold, right? Because to just have like a quantum financial system, right, and not have it actually be backed by something tangible, might throw a lot of people, into feeling like things aren't actually secure from the top to the bottom.
Right.
So there's things that are within the divine plan, and other beings and other places that are working on this with us, right?
Indeed.
And that comes, on an international level and a level right here. So I can't really speak into what the as you walk into financially, really what that piece is going to look for, or what that piece is going to look like, rather. I'm sorry. But I can say that with a sovereignty certificate, you'll be able to write, letters of credit to banking financial institutions. You'll have the ability to defeat any sort of legal action as long as you're abiding by the common law and natural law provisions within the trust guidelines. But this is a vehicle it's literally a golden age trust for those beings who want to step into their true certified sovereignty, and have the certificate that allots, the gift of being able to move divinely on your own accord.
That's right.
No licenses and things like that are needed with the sovereignty certificate from this specific angle or approach. And that's just because the grantorship that I have through the fidelity ceremony and the contract, coming from the UK, allows this, because a lot of the housing of foundational law and stuff, stems from over there. That's why, water's shut off at 32 degrees. And they, our lawyers and administrators have to seek counsel over there before they can actually do things over here.
That's right.
So there's a reason for all of that, right?
Right.
And we have the official common law contract and trust to orchestrate and help our people over here, because things are obviously transforming here. So again, we're here to assist. We're not here to own. We manage, and we do actually control. I will say that we have to control degrees because we have borders, and there's things that within the trust we have to do.
Right.
And there's people in other nations because we're international. So yes, we have to control things, and if people don't like that, then they can mosey on back on to go back into the public. So we're not here to force people by any means, but everyone's got options. But we're here to preserve our families and our generations, and make sure basic needs. That's what we do when we manage.
That's
if
right.
Places aren't caring their people, then that's an issue, and that's where
right.
we come through and we say, "What's up?
What's up?" Because indeed, the scriptures are crystal clear that the meek shall inherit the earth, Mama. So this is the beginning of, like you mentioned earlier, it's a transfer of wealth that's happening. And so the chosen elect that will be the stewards over the land, that's basically what this is, And so, if they don't like it, oh well.
Well, the agreement already happened, though, because I had the vision when I was really young of what I was going to be doing.
Beautiful.
And then obviously, you clear out, you do your healing, you get right with yourself and the creator.
Right.
And then from there, it opened up.
Yes.
And it opened up at the right time.
That's right.
That's how it works. It's right people, right time, right location.
Yes.
That's how the golden age.
That's right.
Three things. It's always that: food, water, shelter.
Listen.
People think it's it's so hard to figure out. Like, well, we got Nasara, we got the money part. You can't. First of all, you can't eat the gold. Okay, so
right.
That's only part of all of this here, the whole finance part. But the idea, the mechanism, the way the mechanism works is camaraderie. It's a code. And the code comes together when the people come together, and specific peoples.
That's right.
Just that.
That's right.
It might start with 12, and who knows what happens from 12 to 144. I don't even know.
Right.
I'm not mathing.
Right. It's real. It's
Well,
real.
apparently there's the call or something, right? I don't know.
Well, I'm
I've got
so
him waking up, you know?
yes, yes. It's I mean, we know that many are called, few are chosen. So for the select few that are willing to answer the call, we getting ready to make some big things happen, big changes in the entire world, in the entire earth, because, like you said, that's who we were called to be and why we're in the earth in the first place at such a time as this.
Well, I'll tell you this, they're all waiting on America.
Say
They're
that.
all waiting on us. We're like the ones they're waiting on.
Yeah, for real. It's
We're in the
real.
promise. I think people forget that. We're the ones, in God we trust. They put it on the FRN note for a reason.
Listen,
right?
That's right.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing.
It's real. It's real. So now, how do you want the people to contact? If they're interested, do you have an email that they can reach out to you directly? I have an email address available as well. How did you want to, move forward as far as what did you say? We're going to be vetting people, making sure that we're dealing with the right people. The information is sensitive. We just don't have time for games. We need to make sure everybody's on the same page. This is serious business. At the end of the day, it's business, nothing personal. So, we are here to handle the business of God, God's business, which are the people, and make sure that, everything is done decent in order. And like the King said, that, the basic necessities. There should be no homelessness. There should be no this. It just should be, peace at the end of the day. That's the covenant that was promised. It's a covenant of peace, dwelling safe in nature, food, water, and shelter. So I'm feeling it. And you had mentioned something about peace, and it made me think about the Treaty of Peace that was created with our foremothers and the governments. I believe it was the 1600s. And so basically, in the scripture, it talks about the seed of Abraham being in a land of their enemies for 400 years, so on and so forth. So when you look at the 1600s and now we're in the 2000s, that's 400 years. That curse has been broken. And when I tell you the scriptures be on point, baby, they be on point. That word is true.
Yep.
The word is true. So here we are. So how would you like for the people to reach out if they are interested in, taking their power back?
Oh, sure am. Thank you. What we can do is, you can email me, first off, if you'd like. I do have an email. I do that here. And that is at Solomons, SOLOMONS, Temple, TEMPLE, United, UNITED, @gmail.com. And that would be the best way of reaching out right now. We've got a lot of things going on right now. And one thing that we're working on is as people come in, we're not asking for money. Asking for an ID, pay for all these things, right, to be something you already are. We're going to make sure that you're set with the components so you're able to remember your own divinity. And that's not by taking and using fictitious ways of doing things. We use them, money and things like that for a time. And now we really need to step into a new way of doing things, and the system's already there. Most people already know.
That's right.
They know that there's a Shasar and a Zara. We know that there's gold, silver, all these different things. So that's not the issue. The issue is us.
Right.
It was me. It was all of us here. So we got to come together and get this right, and we will.
That's right.
We will.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
So yeah, emailing me is the best way right now. I'll put that email up on the book too, so everyone has an option to emailing me, and I will respond, and we'll get things going. But also, we were talking, into doing, sovereignty certificate ceremonies, to really kick things off. So there's a lot of moving parts to this again. So, and again, I do have some teams over on the West Coast and the other places too that we're working with, and then there's Queen Romana up in Canada too, who is working very close on this specific thing that we are as well. So we'd like to combine forces with that.
Yes.
Who aren't aware. And really call in, there's a lot of prophecies around this, the Hopi prophecy, like you said, the biblical aspects of this is too. And I feel like we're in a good spot right now. Specifically being in here in New York.
What? Hey, I'm telling you, when you hit me up, because I didn't know, that you was tapped in to this process, and just I didn't know, because we've spoken over the years, but we never really got too deep. And so for you to message me, right at the time where I'm in New York, and I'm like, wow, it's perfect timing. And that's something that I wanted to talk about too, because I was telling you, and I've been sharing my journey with the people as well, as far as getting the birth certificate authenticated, the affidavit of ownership for the social, doing all of these different processes. But when you and I spoke, you say, oh, you didn't even got to do all that. You don't got to do all that at all. So can you go into why we don't have to do all that?
Well, the big thing is the sovereignty certificate, okay? The sovereignty certificate gives you, it is equivalent to the birth certificate, but in the private, okay? It's what the UCC really looks at to declare whether or not you're an actual certified sovereign being. And as well as where that sovereignty and that fidelity ceremony came from, and who was your grantor, or who is the creator of the trust that granted you the the provisions within the contract, or did you do your own?
Right.
Some people did. I worked on my own for a while, but the one that I was working on definitely didn't come with the bells and whistles of this, because this code goes back, history.
Indeed.
And everything that I was working on trying to create within the trust, my own, it would have taken, years of law school and contract law,
right.
For what the trajectory and what was the embodiment of my soul, which is very large, in my perspective and the way I see the world and what I'm here to do. So this vehicle, came divinely. But yeah, you're not looking at having to sorry for jumping around a little bit, but to get back to what you're asking about the birth certificates and things like that. Again, the sovereignty certificate replaces all of that. And so you wouldn't have to, based upon myself being the grantor, have to do all of that. We streamlined the code and the sequence so people can walk right in and do what their divine essence is really has called them to do for quite a long time, and be able to move in that too. Not just like, I'm sovereign, like I know I'm the sovereign being, and I'm whatever, but it's also like, well, like getting your automobile, like getting your house, getting your things that are basic needs tended to. So the sovereignty certificate is one of those instruments that will to help those be able to do that, and also let them the powers that be know that you're connected to the temple.
Indeed. Indeed. And so, this goes back to, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Daniel just sent a text message. I told him about the live today. I totally lost my train of thought. But, okay, that's what I wanted to ask. So, or actually make a statement about how, and you mentioned the powers that be and that 1% that run the world, they strictly deal with contract law or trust. They move in trust. They don't deal with money, because like you say, money is debt notes. It's an illusion. And so can you go into that to just kind of break it down to the people?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Well, this is where it's a little like, there's been so many different things, and shout out to all the royal families, by all means, because they get so much backlash, because people don't understand, a lot of how the components of a trust work, and specifically, this sort of trust, which, some of those families obviously have. And, you don't, with this trust, you're not entitled to owning anything.
Right.
You can't do that. You can't operate and be able to get the gift of God and be able to own things.
That's right.
In the way up against the trust itself. So, what's happening is that from the outside in, inside out sort of, feel, it may look like on the outside to a lot of people like, oh, well, because it's this name and this name, and because they apparently have what looks like a lot of money, they're the ones. But
right.
Little do they know, too, it's actually the people on the foundation, the corporations, the businesses, some of these CEOs, who really actually are trying to, to do things that might not feel right in your soul, in your sovereignty.
Right. And so, they got this Agenda 2030 where they say you will own nothing and you will be happy. And so, of course, they use fear to harvest our energy. But we were talking about how that's basically, the plan, because it's already what it is, we don't own anything. Ownership is an illusion, and how they teach us ownership, though, but they move in trust. So it's all about control and stuff like that. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, there's control involved, and if there's somebody who has a lot of control and you don't know about the control that they have, then you're going to think things are happening. Basically, what we got going on here is we have people who think that people who are in control, for good reasons, because they protect, some do the best they can do. Not everyone's doing a bad job, okay?
Right.
And not everyone's doing a good job either.
That's right.
So we're here to fix that, but the idea is if you hear something like a name to a family and they have a lot of control and you feel like you have no control, then you're going to think things are happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that there's not things out there, okay?
Right.
But you got to think about what the mind does versus the heart, okay? Half of us have been hijacked with ideas, thoughts that have nothing to do with your soul and your embodiment to what you're supposed to do here.
That's right. That's
so
true.
What most people do is they'll sit online and they'll complain, they'll look up all these things about certain people who are trying to do really good things.
Right.
For them. But also can't get it out because, again, most of the public, right, is kind of, is in admiralty law.
That's
right.
right.
See it.
Right.
So how would you be able to really, speak into something on land if you're lost at sea when, they're over there, whatever. It's just like, so we're trying to really look at this from an inside, outside in perspective here. And this is temple building. You got a foundation, and then you have water underneath the foundation. The water also, when it meets land, sits on a bank, and then you got a bank, a river bank, right? Just like Jordan Maxwell would kind of go into this stuff too, and we've been living in what we say, this. There's been a feminine energy within the law in the jurisdictions, hence admiralty law, the waters, your mother's waters. You're birthed into them. We haven't really been out of them because we haven't really grown up yet. Okay, so we've clearly been, and it's kind of opposite to what some of the things have been saying, is that we're going back into a feminine thing, but really we've been in the water the whole time.
Listen, I'm telling you.
Oh,
you speaking a word now.
Yep. So now we got to really think about what's been said, what was given to us, and how we really process it. What's the heart say, not the mind?
Right.
So if we've been in a feminine time, and because, right, the queen who ruled the sea, and there was a shift, right, and a transfer to where now we're building a bridge to the land.
Right.
Doesn't that sound like a prophecy or something to me? I mean, I don't know. It sounds like a prophecy to me.
Hey, it's prophecy. It is.
So it sounds like we're all in this thing together here, and some of us have been on the land for a long time and didn't know how to, to help and assist those who've been lost at sea, or we have, and then we've charged them a buttload.
Right.
Which makes me really wonder where our souls are at. For those who do that. Okay.
Right.
So we all have something we got to work on, whether you're sea-bound, land-bound, or whatever. Okay. But the idea is, again, that we can build together. It's an option. This is just an option. God gives us an option to whether or not we want to do this, and we will.
Right.
We will. But when they say it won't be televised, it all really depends on when we collectively can come together, and what collectively come together look like. Well,
right. Because ain't nobody coming to save us. So, like you say, it's time to grow up, be adults about it, and, realize this, so that we can really, whatever we need to do. If you need to heal, you need more self-care, whatever you need to do to make yourself whole, that's what needs to happen, so that we can come together. Because we know that hurt people, and we just over that. You know what I'm saying? That cycle is done and over with. Now we got, people walking in their power, people walking in self-love, self-care, fiercely, like we were created to be and walk in. So when you talk about how we're all lost at sea and how the majority of the people are operating admiralty law, can you break that down in layman terms so that people can understand, you mentioned lawful. So is this lawful, or what's the other word? You compare two words. It's lawful.
Yeah, you have lawful and then you have legal. Okay, when you're looking at lawful, you're looking at things that tend to come from common law or more of the private side, whereas legal, when I say lost at sea, most of us have legal titles. We view ourselves as legal entities of a man or a woman, where on the private side you're actual real living being. And that's again, coming right from basically the UCC codes. So when I say lost at sea, it's the idea of utilizing the contracts that were given through legal titles and entities, which then if you're doing that, then you'd be following the statutes, the legislations, the public policies that come with that, which has been just for most of us, right, it's just a reoccurring of just like, this is just the way that it is that we sign, and then we're told, right, and then we wait, and then we're told, and the essence with sovereignty is you don't have to wait. Why would you have to wait when you're moving and operating in a specific capacity? That is truly like that avatar or divine essence of immediately being there for you, which we can do, but we're out of practice, right? So when we legally are looking at things, we're looking at most definitely the public. So that's the same thing with real property. You have a title, right? Mm-hmm. You got a title to, but more if you're in the private side, it's actually called real property, not the legal entity of the property, but the real property.
Right. And
then the actual alloidal title, right? And then the fee simple. But fee simples, you got to watch out, too. And when you look it up, it has the word ownership in it, too. And fee simples, for those who aren't necessarily aware, it's similar to the alloidal title, where it gives reference to, the more of the management side, of which is more of the sovereign side, because, again, the more sovereign you are, the less paperwork and the less that you're going to doom yourself as owning anything, because you're going to realize that might not be the best for your specific makeup, because I don't know, is it natural going down to the D&B and sitting there for hours and filling out paperwork for something
permission
that
everything is permission, right? We have to get permission to do this, permission to do that. And so you're saying once you take yourself out of being state's property, because what I've learned is that, with the birth certificate, that makes us property of the state that we were born in. So once you reclaim that, or you take back your power, you go through the process, you're no longer under that jurisdiction where you have to get permission to drive. So then you don't need a license, right? So it's just about, like, we're free beings. We were created free by God. We're supposed to be free like nature, but we have all of these restrictions and these different things set in place to keep us bound. And it does affect your soul when you gotta get permission for everything. So I understand when you said that, like, it goes against your soul to be having to sit there, and then you may be a little stressed out, especially with apartments, for instance, when you have to fill out an application for your apartment, and you don't know if you're going to get approved because you may have an eviction or whatever. So this process eliminates all of that to where you truly get what your heart desire. You can have whatever you like.
It's that, and then also you don't even need necessarily. You don't need like to come on over to Solomon's Temple to really figure that out, because really you could wake up tomorrow and say, look, I got my power back, and I'm saying no to everything that that is forced upon me
and insult your soul.
Wait for me.
Yes.
Won't step in that, but that's like, well, I'm going to go to the bank, I'm going to tell them, no, they can't do this, and then before I know it, I'm in jail.
What?
But there's the fear thing.
Right.
So really, get through all of that. You're going to see the judge. Go see the judge if it comes to that. Spend the night in jail. Stay in your truth.
That's right.
Most people are willing to be able to do that. They can't stand naked in the truth long enough because they want to go run and hide. They get hijacked thinking something's going to happen. Oh, no. Be
fear.
Careful.
That's it. That fear.
They things because they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And they're feeling with their heart. Because once you go to the judge, that's the best thing you want to do. Get in front of the judge and declare that you're the natural person, and you're not the fictitious. But when he calls your name up to the stand, you better not answer to that name.
Right.
Because you're not that name.
That's right. And I got that practice in with a situation with my dogs. And, he was threatening to take me to jail for contempt of court, this, that, and the third. And I told him, I don't consent to any, you're not going to tax me. You're not going to put no levies on me, because at the end of the day, the court system is strictly taxation. We were talking, and I think you mentioned that there's no criminal court. It's just all taxes. It's all about the Benjamins. That's it, and you mentioned how there are no true judges in this country. They're all just administrators. And so, I knew that going in, because I had been doing a little study, and like you said, you cannot answer to the name. You can't answer to your own name that you was born with, So I had to reply back, I'm a flesh and blood female. I said, I'm here to my estate. And so, I wasn't answering to that name. He said, well, what do you want me to call you, woman? I said, yeah, just call me woman. Yeah. But because when you answer to your own name, and it's just a lot of deceptive intelligence, it puts you under that jurisdiction. If I had answered to the name, then they could have took me to jail, for contempt of court, because I gave them hell, man. I gave them hell, and I was recording and everything. It was nothing they could do.
Yeah, you most of the time people don't need, and I'm not, don't listen to me for legal advice, but I will share, some things here, and however, cookie crumbles, it crumbles here, and you can kind of figure it out for yourself. But when you go into court, you're going into a royal court. You got a magistrate there in that jurisdiction, obviously, and you yourself, depending on how you want to look at it here, you don't have to go.
Right. Now, so what happens when they issue the warrant when you don't go?
If you, it's almost like this. It's like, well, you're getting invited to go to the court, to the royal court, and for some reason they're going to tax you. So it's like, why would you turn yourself in?
Right.
When and you can just declare, like, I'm not going.
I ain't going.
And let them take, like, if they want to do all of that game, let them take you until you get in front of the judge. And it's not even a judge, it's an administrator. And stand naked in your truth, your heart. Don't use your mind. You don't need any paperwork. You don't need any paperwork, really. You really don't.
As long as you have the knowledge.
You're for real.
Yes.
They'll know that you're for real.
That's right.
But you're gonna have to know.
Gotta know.
What to say and how to say it, right? Which is the knowledge part, which is the time part, which is where actually your goal's at.
Right. Right.
Okay. So it becomes this again a process that many are looking at from a trajectory that doesn't really help them.
Right. I mean, a majority of people.
I have no problem with the law enforcement by any means. When I go to places, I go right down, towns and stuff, I go right down, I tell them who I am.
That's right. You decree and declare.
All the stuff that they've done and stuff like that, you got to take your power back. That's what they're wanting to do. And I'm here to help with that because we got, we with the trust, we're protected.
That's
the military. Protected law enforcement. Okay? That was part of what we did, part of what I did, and we manifested. We were like, we don't want this anymore. Y'all did it. Y'all were part of it. You already know what time it is,
That's
so
right.
we got, we have options here and how we want to see things and how we want to do it. But would we know what to do with it? Would we know what to do with our own power?
That's right. That's right. You own it. You own it. And, the majority of people, and it's through the programming, of course, and just, not believing in themselves, the fear factor, and so that's the main thing that's holding the people back is this fear of these people that have no power over us. It's an illusion. And so when I went to court and this judge was threatening me and telling me that the people of New Orleans put him over them, I said, well, you don't have power. He said, they gave me power over them. I said, well, you don't have power over me. at all, bro. So, when you are unafraid, like the knowledge that is, and so the people perish for the lack of knowledge. So, and the knowledge can be there. It's here. But are you going to take out the time to study to show yourself approved? Because you're going to get out of life what you put into it. If you're focusing on all these things outside of yourself, you're not going to really get too far. But when you go within, you start focusing on yourself and really understanding who we are and who you are as an individual, how much power you truly hold, and how much just you by yourself can make a change in the earth. Then it raises the vibration. You start walking in this power, so on and so forth. So we are calling forth for people that are ready to do that. Like you're healed, and of course, we talked about being a living example for the masses, and so it will trickle down because people are great imitators, and so that's what they do. So if we're doing our part, the people start imitating and hopefully take their power back, decide to heal, because healing is a choice. So that you can get to that place in your life. But what we do, what we are seeking are people that's ready to move forward in the process. Can you give your email again? Because we've been on for a minute. So if we got some new viewers, they can, tap in with you.
Yeah, the email would be Solomon's, so that's plural, Temple United at gmail.com. And then, I'm here on Facebook, and then I'm on WhatsApp as well and stuff. But just drop the email first, and then from there, for those interested in this particular endeavor here.
And I have you tagged on the video as well. So, after the live, if you can put your email in the comments, that'll be great. So, nobody mess up or whatever, have the correct email. So, I think we pretty much covered, because I've been going live about this process for many years now. So I think we've pretty much, covered a pretty nice foundation for people that are ready to move forward in this. And I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Do you have, anything else that you want to say? The floor is totally open to you, but I think we've covered quite a bit, especially for what we're seeking. We need people that at least understand what we've talked about today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the best thing, one of the last things I'd like to say is, I love the fact, and I'm on a healing journey myself. We're all on that. I don't know if I'm ever really gonna get off that in ways.
Right.
I would like to encourage the remembrance of the true divinity that was placed and captured the moment your inception took place, and that you had it actually before, but that moment that happened, you were created to be the perfect sentient being that you are, and there's a lot of money in saying that people are broken. There's a lot of money. They made a lot of money off of it.
Yes.
And it retained the knowledge and the the practices and the procedures to help us, right?
Right.
But also with this process, and why many people might not step into themselves, is because of not feeling worthy.
That's right.
And that was something that has happened to all of us along the way.
It's true.
So we need to really, to step into, and anytime I'm saying this, to myself included, right?
Yes.
We are included. We're okay.
Right.
We're not broken. It's what we think we are.
Right.
And it's actually, quite enlightening and kind of comical, because it is that beautiful, and the kingdom has been laid out for since the beginning, I should say.
Yes.
It's really, it didn't go anywhere. We're just kind of waking up.
That's right.
Concepts and light codes to help us to be able to access this eternal and internal gift.
That's right. And like you said, healing is a lifelong journey. Nobody's totally healed. It's something that we will continue, because it's just been so many lifetimes of trauma and drama. So it's going to take time, but the Great Awakening has been beautiful. And so feeling worthy, to live your best life, to live in abundance and to have generational wealth for your children, your children's children, so on and so forth. These are the promises of God. And like you said, the law was laid out since the beginning, and we're really dealing, at the end of the day, it's the laws of nature. How does nature, the laws of God, they're, synonymous. So it's just a beautiful thing, and I'm so grateful. It's like I said, I've been on this journey, with understanding that the birth certificate and so on and so forth had a monetary value, and even got a chance to, back in 2016, I had found the routing numbers on the Fed website. Back then they had it where, depending on what your last name was, that was the routing number for your account, which is your social security number. So when I shared that information on Facebook, people was paying off all kind of stuff with their social, and they went to the news and threatened us and said they're going to take everybody to jail that's paying off houses, cars, and ordering stuff on Amazon. We went ham and turkey with it, what I'm saying? So now here you are, and we can get it all done legally. Is that the correct term to use?
Well, legally and lawfully.
Legally and lawfully.
Yep, because we have a bridge where we can meet everyone right where we're at. We're not a movement. We're not trying to get people to just join our efforts, because they're, we love our mother's waters, clearly.
Yes.
Okay? There was lessons we learned when Admiralty law, obviously, which is still in play and, is there. But there's things that happened that we needed to go through.
That's
okay? Right. In that process. So as we interlock with land here and we bridge, the trust itself allows us to move, in the public via our jurisdiction, to be able to manage the way we've been granted to. So
indeed. And I don't want to leave anybody out. I know that I mentioned, as far as the trustee aspect of this, we're looking for people or seeking individuals who already understand, they're ready to walk in their power. But if you want to learn, the King has a lot of information that I'm sure he'll be willing to share. And it's just stuff that you have to look into. You have to study to show yourself approved, because you're going to have to know how to defend yourself or stand up for yourself if you're ever tested. If you decide to come into this and you don't have a driver's license, because you don't need one, but you get pulled over by the police, you need to know what to say. There's a difference between driving and traveling. And so I'm even learning this. You never say you're driving nowhere, because that's when you put yourself under that jurisdiction. You say you're traveling, because as free beings we have the right to travel. So different things like that, and it takes time, but it's a solid foundation here that's been presented to us. I'm definitely going full speed ahead with this. I'm all in. I know it's real. I know it's the truth. I know it's divine, and it is divine timing that this opportunity has presented itself at such a time as this. So I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say before we end the live?
No, I just, I'm very grateful myself, extremely grateful, and I appreciate you. I appreciate all of my loved ones, close and far, who've helped us along on this journey.
Yes.
most definitely been a collective effort, and
That's
those
right.
who've supported me, I'm looking forward to support you all on this level, and you will be hearing from us. That's for sure.
Oh, we
So,
making noise, baby. 2023, it's on and popping.
so, the
Indeed.
land, mm-mm-mm.
Yes. Yeah, Atlantis is being rebooted.
Yes, yes. Uh, we've got a lot of again a lot of moving parts to this, and it's there's many people involved who we are obviously looking to join forces with. Our trustees that we're looking at, we're looking for them to be able to move and operate in the divinity. And I think that, if you're interested, you'll probably have known throughout the years of your life that something like this might be coming along. So yeah, I mean, don't try to be a trustee. Don't try to do anything. Accept yourself for who you are and where you are at.
That's right.
No matter where you're at, you're going to receive. Sorry about that.
Oh no, hey, that's confirmation. I learned from the tarot world. After
Right.
they say something and you hear a sound in the background, right? That hey, listen, who let them dogs out? It's real. It's real. But thanks again. I'm sure we will be, going live more because, we know that we have to be a living example, and so, just continuing to share this information, put it out there to show and prove that, the things that we say is indeed the truth, because, this is all about proving all things, and well, it's not all about that, but we are to prove all things. And so this is very real. And it's happening now. And if you'd like to be a part of the team, definitely contact King, and he's going to put his email in the comments. So, you make sure you email in the correct address. So thank you so much, Imperial King Solomon, or his Imperial King Solomon. And y'all already know I'm Shonda K. So we will see y'all soon. Y'all have a beautiful evening. Thank y'all so much for tuning in with us this evening. Shalom. Thank you.